Hello and welcome to From Our Perspective, two therapist moms and a mic. I'm Claudia Glassman.
And I'm Katie Truax.
And here we are.
Hi.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about back to school anxiety.
Yeah.
For those of you who are new to listening to us, we don't do a lot to prepare for these podcasts most times, which is kind of like what we think is part of our charm. If others would agree with that. But we kind of made a decision, right? That's a mindful thing that we kind of want to be off the cuff. We want to be transparent and authentic and just kind of spontaneous in some ways. But we do talk before we push play or record about what the topic is going to be. And we were reviewing some of our former, our former podcasts, and noticing that the one we did last year, Claudia, that was in 2023, right? We did one on anxiety that was very
parental anxiety.
And 'tis this season for back to school, and so we thought, well, let's kind of blend those two topics and talk about something that's timely and also apparently on the hearts and minds of a lot of people, which is anxiety.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, part of our not preparing is we want to be inspired by whatever the week brought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And whatever we're kind of feeling today, which, changes day to day, week to week.
I can't hear you anymore. Can you hear me?
Hello, am I back?
You're back.
Oh my goodness. As we were saying, so you're back to school. We start tomorrow. I know some of the country is not until after Labor Day.
Yes, that's right. I know my sister's in New Jersey and I'm in Florida, and it's always so funny to me how much of a difference in time there is between when my kids start and her kids start, or when her kids get out, when my kids get out. It's like a huge chunk of time. But yeah, Ellie started back August 1st.
Okay. Was she anxious? Was she nervous?
Yes. And it manifested in a couple of ways. I would say for several weeks prior, and it took me a minute to pick up on this. For maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, we were kind of doing like the back to school shopping, right? Because we tend to be busy. And so I wanted to start that well enough in advance that I knew we would have time to accomplish what we needed to accomplish by the deadline, given that I don't have a ton of free time to go and just peruse Dillard's. Right? So we started with clothes because the school supply list was late to come out. And then we did some clothes. We were a little bit successful, a little bit not. But interestingly enough, she wasn't too stressed about the clothes. And then the school supply shopping came out. And oh my God, Claudia, the degree to which this child had to have the perfect school supplies, in her opinion, like, I mean, I was like, what is going on here? I was about to pull my hair out, to the point where the last school supply on the list was composition notebooks.
Mm.
We looked at composition notebooks at Target. We looked at composition notebooks, Office Depot, Staples, Michael's, Barnes and Noble, fancy paper supply companies, Amazon. I mean, you name it, we shop.
Aren't they all the same? Aren't the composition notebooks the ones with like the like the sprinkling, and they're like that, the taped together binding? They're all the same, right?
No. many flavors of composition notebooks. Some much more expensive than others. And I went by the end of the day, it was like a Sunday, and we had been shopping like all weekend. And it was like the end of the day. And I'm like, mommy needs mommy juice, and I need for you to pick up freaking composition book, dude. I bought her $30 worth of composition books, Claudia. I bought her like a 20 pack in like every color of pastel, because she's into pastels right now. And I'm like, I don't care. I do not care how much I spend. If this is going to like finish our shopping list, yes. So we have composition books going to cousins as little happy gifts. I mean, literally, like, everybody got to choose their favorite color. I'm like, Mommy might need a composition book, because now we have 20 of them.
I might need to start journaling in a composition book.
You know, and it became this a realization of, for her, it was, I need to have the perfect supplies so I feel okay. Yeah. And she even said to me at one point, she goes, Mom, I'm afraid I won't have the supplies that other people think are cool. The composition books are even a thing of like, do you fit in or not, right?
Yeah. It's just that pressure, right? That general pressure to fit in. And
And for those of you who are newer to our podcast, my kid is going to be 12. She's she's in 7th grade now. So this is middle school.
Middle of middle school.
And there's a wrong way. This, right? The composition. Yeah. Pencil pouches, lunch boxes. I mean, it had to be right.
Wow. Were you nervous for her starting school back up? Because I think there's the kids' anxiety. And it's funny because I think back to my childhood. I wasn't often anxious about the first day of school. I was more excited to see my friends. Like, unless I was at a new school, then I felt a little more nervous. But I was mostly excited to reconnect with my friends. And I don't remember feeling high anxiety around that. Adam, however, our kids going to school makes him feel anxious. And he's not even the one going, and he carried a lot of anxiety around school. So he also carries anxiety around our children going to school. Like, he feels nervous for them. Did you feel any anxiety for Ellie or no?
No, I mean, I didn't. I think the first day she said, I feel nervous. And we did the reframe, right? The classic therapist reframe. I said, honey, we've talked about this before. Your body responds in the exact same way physiologically to excitement and to nervousness. And the only difference is the story your brain's telling you. So let's say we're excited. She goes, nope, I'm nervous.
It's like, I know what I'm talking about.
Okay, thanks, Mom. No, I'm nervous. And to her point, I think there's some trepidation, right, around what am I getting into? And interesting, Claudia, I don't know if I've told you this. There's no new girls this year. We have 2 new boys. 2 girls are no longer there. No, 3 girls are no longer there. But there's no new girls. And so the milieu is still the same. Yeah. And we say 1 year, but it's 2 months, right? It's 2 months later, right? And the milieu was one that did not feel good to Ellie. And so, she's weathering it well, but I am watchful. I don't feel like I have negative emotion around it. Like, I don't have any nervousness or, physiological response that would say to me I'm anxious, but like, I'm watching to make sure she stays like where it seems like she's weathering it well. Yeah. How about you guys? You're coming up on it. Tomorrow is your big day.
Tomorrow is our big day. And we have a lot of news. It's a new school with a completely different different type of school, right? My kids are at a Montessori. This is not. So it's incredibly different for them. It's a lot more structured maybe than Montessori. It's like your typical middle school. You change classes, right? Ansie's going to 7th, Kenzie's going to 4th. So it's very different. And it's a new school where they don't know anybody. So they're nervous. Yeah. I mean, and we have a lot of conversations about it. And I think I can't take away the nervousness, right? That's anticipation. They don't know what they don't know. And so they are really nervous. I think also a little bit excited. We have a lot of talks in our house about new things. And, I think the reality is some kids are better at new things than, not better, but some kids find it easier to approach new situations than others.
Yeah.
Right? Some are more cautious and don't like change as much. And other people, I guess people in general are like this, are just like, yeah, I don't care. It's fine. It makes me a little nervous, but I also love change and I can adjust quickly. And, it's a temperament thing. So we have a lot of conversations about it. And I know Brene Brown does this, talks about the fucking first times of anything. Like, new job, school, the
Yeah.
first time you do anything,
Right.
right? Being potentially like overwhelming and feeling like you're not doing it well because you've never done it before.
Yeah.
Right. I have reframed that to my children, I think, to the freaking first times, trying to make it more PG, although maybe I don't need to. But we talk about that. Like the first day is going to feel maybe more overwhelming than the second or third or fourth or 10th or whatever, right? It's just that first of anything. You just have to kind of move through it to get past it, right? So we've had a lot of conversations like that. I will tell you the school has been, maybe not so much for my youngest, but for my oldest, they do a lot of settling stuff, which is middle school, right? Not only middle school, but the middle of middle school. So she got assigned a buddy who has basically an identical class schedule to hers that will help her navigate. We did a new person orientation, then the regular orientation. The teachers, because there's not a lot of new students, I think there's like 4 or 5 in the grade, know who the new kids are and who to support. So they're very mindful of that transition. I think my youngest, because they kind of get plopped into class and stay there, maybe less so. But I had a meeting with the teacher today, and she's new. So my kid's new. She's new to the school. So there's a lot of new people. And so, we had that conversation too. I was like, Kenzie, your teacher's new, and it's new to her, and she doesn't know anyone, and she doesn't,
That'll be great.
She's nervous too. I asked her, I'm like, how are you feeling about tomorrow? She's like, I'm excited, but nervous. It's her first day too.
I love it.
Right.
You're like having a counseling session with the teacher, the parent teacher meeting. Like, how are you feeling?
Yes. Are you doing okay? The middle school counselor is new this year. And of course I'm like, hey, I'm Claudia. You're new. We're new too. He's like, okay. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of conversations around it. But much like Ellie, right? The only thing you can do is go and get it over with. Yeah. And have patience for the behaviors that may be a result of it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, right? So my kid was kind of edgy and testy, mostly regarding school supplies, right? We had some moments where she threw me attitude about things that were peripheral, right? Like she couldn't log into this thing, or cart wasn't working the way it was, and I got the attitude, man. I got the shade about things. And I'm like, man, I'm just showing up here trying to help you find this composition book. Like, why am I why am I getting like shrapnel right thrown at me,
Yeah.
And again, like I said, it took me a minute to put 2 and 2 together. In the moment, it just seemed like she was just being an ass. But then I'm like, wait, you're nervous about this, What are some of the other things we might see from kids, Claudia, of any age, preparing for back to school if they're having a little bit of anxiety?
Yeah, I think clinginess. We had, we joke, we have a little roommate right now. She sleeps on the floor in our room. We're like, when does this end? But she
younger of the two.
Yeah, she needs a little more, I think, comfort.
Right.
Because it feels daunting to her.
Yeah.
So she like parks it on our floor and has been there for a minute. Right. So potential clinginess, even just like walking into the school. Yesterday we went for Ansley's orientation. It wasn't Kenzie's. We went for Ansley, my oldest, and the youngest grabbed Adam's hand and squeezed it real hard when she walked in. It was a room full of middle schoolers. It was a lot of parents. It was a lot of people. And I think she just felt right. So that clinging, right. The need to be closer than maybe they would normally be.
Yeah.
Yes. Attitude and agitation, maybe just general, maybe more agitation, more sensitive to things. You have a spectrum too. You've got, maybe our kids who are a little bit nervous, and then you go all the way to the other end of the line to those that are like school avoidant, right? Where the anxiety is so overwhelming that like, I can't go.
Right.
I've worked with kids like that. A lot of them end up getting homeschooled because it's just, they can't learn in that environment because they're so overwhelmed with anxiety that it's not helpful. Right. So they can't stay in school. They can't attend school. They don't make it through a full day,
Yeah.
That's the other extreme. Right. And then there's kids who are like, man, I go and just seem to take it. Maybe they're a little bit nervous, a little bit excited, but it's not enough it just registers, right? But it's not impacting anything. Yeah.
And then you've got some kids who will show some physiological signs of distress.
Yeah, stomach aches.
They process it, right, or say it, or can know it, right, with their logical minds, but their body's telling you.
Yeah.
Things like upset tummies, maybe headaches, maybe sleep disturbances one way or another, difficulty sleeping, wanting to sleep more, feeling fatigue. Am I missing anything?
Like headaches, any physical symptom that maybe isn't explained otherwise, potentially, right? I mean, it's hard. Those are a little hard to weed out because sometimes it is an actual illness,
Right. But even that, I mean, gosh, stress can weaken your immune system and make you more vulnerable to getting a common cold or something like that, right? That may be floating around, right? Any kind of stress. Think of how we manifest stress, right? Our tummies, our muscles get tight, our heads hurt sometimes, right? And kiddos the same way. Difficulty sleeping, sleepless nights, tossing and turning. And then, golly, and then let's throw the layer of hormones on top, right? For kids, our kids' ages, like,
Yeah.
what are we seeing and why? But yeah, and to pay attention. Okay, so then what do we do, right? What do we do? You talked about kind of some supportive things, right? You mentioned you're allowing Kenzie to sleep on your floor, right? And that's huge. And not all parents might know to do that. Right. But you're a therapist and you made the mental note, but you're probably quicker to the uptake than I was when my kid was being a jerk, right? Okay, you're actually just scared or you're nervous, right? You're worried, you're trepidate. What's the word? You have some trepidation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, we've been backpack shopping. It's been a thing. The backpack has been our thing, right? It's like just the amount of backpacks I've ordered and trying to find the one is a challenge. But it's the same thing, right? It's like, this is what I can control. And if I have the perfect backpack, then at least that's, feels good to me. Yeah. I think it's having conversations. It's normalizing it. We have a very open conversations about it's okay to feel nervous. It's a new thing. There's a lot you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about not feeling the pressure to have to figure it all out on day 1, day 2, day 4, day 10, whatever, that it takes time and different people, different amounts of time to settle in. Right. I think for my kids in new school, it's like, what if we don't make friends? Right. And I think that maybe more so my oldest already has a phone full of phone numbers from 2 orientation days because that's how she rolls. And she's very social and has never met a stranger. But my youngest is quieter and more reserved and just a little more introverted and more she observes long before she dives in. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think for her, it's a little bit more of how do I connect with peers? But again, you don't have to do that on day 1. It'll come. Right. And we just have a lot of conversations normalizing the discomfort they may be feeling, and they may actually feel for a little bit until it ceases to be new and you settle in again.
I love that. I also heard you mention, that Adam was holding her hand. That's, I think, something too, because I think sometimes parents can fall into the trap of pushing kids to not do the things, right? And maybe more so as they age, right? And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking you know what? There have been some mornings when Ellie's been in my lap. Mm-hmm. Or all summer long, she kind of just grazed and ate when she wanted to eat. She'll be 12, so she can fix herself food and, just we pay for it and she makes it, but now it's, Mommy, I want you to cook my eggs for me.
That's that regression, that nurturing they need. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I do that every school morning. I cook breakfast but this started about a week or a little bit more before school. So, in hindsight, that probably was what that was, is that kind of subconscious craving for that nurturing behavior, the touch, right? The sleeping in the bedroom, the crawling in the lap, the rub my back, the cook my food, whatever that how do I feel love from my mommy or from my daddy? Like that, even if I'm 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 or 16 or 17 or 18, how do I feel comforted right now? And
Yeah.
I think for parents to, you know, be aware that those comforts are necessary. Because I think some parents could fall into the trap of, you're old enough to do that yourself, or stop doing that. Don't, why are you being, you know, a baby? Or why are you being needy? Why are you being clingy? Why are you being irrational or emotional or whiny, right? Why
Yeah.
are you cooperating with bedtime all of a sudden, right?
Right. Because it comes out of nowhere and and it's not, they're not connecting it back to, I feel nervous.
So can I sleep with you because I'm nervous?
Right. It's just the behavior. Yeah. And, again, it's always figuring out that need behind that behavior. But yeah, I think that clinginess or the small regressions, right?
Mhm.
Like, yes, I can do that on my own, but I'm going to ask you to do it for me now. And it's like, and I think it's important to lean into that a little bit, not to the point where you're like debilitating them from, growing.
Right.
But it's okay. So she sleeps on the floor a few nights. Or so you make some eggs until the middle of the school year when you're like, hey, you know what? You're back on egg duty. I did my time, right? It's okay to temporarily lean into that because for a lot of kids, they've been home with you all summer, or maybe not even with you, but in their space, in a space they're comfortable and don't feel a lot of stressors. They're now going out into the world for 8 hours away from you.
Yeah.
They might need a little extra dose of nurturing and coddling, maybe even before they can take that deep breath and then assert themselves the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're getting a lot of like, I miss you texts, and the other day Rob picked Ellie up and she's like, where's mommy? And he said, well, she's at the office. And she goes, well, I want to go to the office. Okay, this kid does not like to come here anymore. She's grown up at our offices. Like she would rather be home, but, and Rob's like, she's going to be with a client. And he's like, I don't care. I'll just go sit in the back room. Like, I just want to be near mommy,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a lot of that's coming up right now too, which is sweet. It's endearing, especially I think when our kids are our kids' ages, again, they're individuating, differentiating and growing and becoming more and more independent and self-sufficient. And to have some of those like, mommy, make my eggs, right? Okay.
Followed by, get out of here. What are you doing here? Whiplash. Yeah. Yeah. So I think anything like that, right? And I would argue, if you really pay attention, this isn't just a back to school thing. This could be like, I don't know, if your kid is a little bit of a fear of the doctor and they know they have a doctor's appointment coming up, you start to see some of these behaviors, right?
Yeah.
Anything that can create anxiety. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just, we kind of take for granted what we ask our kids to do sometimes. Like I think about this. If you told me you have to switch schools where you'll go nobody and drop you off on, 8 a.m. some morning and you're gonna go to figure out the classes and where everything is and like do this work and I'm kind of short circuiting and I'm a adult with a lot of life skills. Right. Or when we start new jobs, don't we get nervous that we don't know anyone there? We don't know the system. We don't know the policies. We don't know how things work. Right? Like we feel it too, but we forget that our kids with way less life experience than we have get put in these situations where they have to meet all new people, sometimes all new, even if you're at the same school, it could be a totally different class. Maybe none of your friends are in it, right? Different teacher. Who knows if that's good or bad? And maybe you heard something from the year before because, people talk and there's all kinds of things that can make them nervous. So I think it's allowing them to have the conversation, ask, and then say, yeah, that's okay. We do a lot of, I think also like creating kind of like you're making eggs in the morning, right? For Ellie, like rituals. Do you have a like before school ritual that you do that creates some kind of comfort and routine? Do you have an after school ritual that you do? And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be a check-in or, I learned not to ask how was your day because I get crickets. Or what did you do? I hear nothing, which clearly you did something for 8 hours. But I'll just say like, it's so good to see you guys. And then we put on their favorite music and drive home.
Right.
right? And we have, I think Adam came up with this. He's like, pick a power song. So when they feel really nervous, we play power music in the car on the way to the thing that they're nervous for.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, anything that kind of creates a sense of comfort.
Yeah, we do a lot of music too in the car. Yeah, the car's a nice transition time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that I've learned about Ellie too is creating time to just coexist in the same space where there's no agenda and no conversation per se that has to happen. Like, you know, and then spontaneously, that's usually at this stage for us when she will come to me with like, let me tell you what happened today at school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's stuff between the friend group or, oh my gosh, Claudia, I don't think I had told you this. First, what I don't know, they have this new class now. I don't know if it's new to this grade or if it's new to the school, but it's called Hope. And it's like what we used to do, like health class, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so they blended kind of like, they don't have PE at her school, but it's like they used to call it team sports, which is, there's no team sports. It's like walk around the track. I don't know why they call it that, but they blended that with like what we used to do health, right? And they've called it Hope, and it's an acronym for something. So there's this dude, right, who's like at least in his 50s, who's teaching this class, right, to these 11, 12, and 13-year-old children. And Ellie likes this guy. He's been at the school for a while, and she likes him. But she came over, she goes, I think his name is Mr. Brian, but I need to make sure I've got the right guy. But anyway, he stood up and he was like, I'm going to teach you all about sex this year. This is what I get dumped on me at like 8:30 at night when we're like winding down, doing our supplements and toothbrushing routine, you know, and I'm like, I need to be in a Zen place. And like all this, I heard that a 6-year-old man is going to be teaching my 11-year-old daughter about sex at some point this year. Like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, here we are. This is where we are. This is the year for that, I guess. Oh my gosh.
That's funny.
Yeah. A lot of new stuff.
Yeah. 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 It's, you know, the one thing I think that's guaranteed in life is that new things come up and we have to try new things and we get put in new situations and meet new people. It's a good skill to have, but I also respect that, you know, again, some people navigate that with more ease than others.
Mm-hmm.
Some people hide their anxiety better than others, right? So your kiddo may feel anxious but not show it in the same way or show it as obviously. But I think, you know, again, obviously therapist talking, we just had a lot of conversations and a lot of normalizing it and a lot of like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Like one step at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like it's okay to feel lost. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to ask. We do a lot of that too. And that was the other conversation we had. Advocate for yourself. If you don't know where you're going at the school, ask.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand what's happening in a class, ask. Mm-hmm. If you don't know how something works, ask. Mm-hmm. You know, we also do, I do a lot of modeling or using myself. Mm-hmm. So I've changed schools a lot, you know, as a kid, and I had conversations with my kids about that, about what it was like for me. And it may be different for them, but what was helpful for me or how I felt or thought about it. Mm-hmm. We went to orientation yesterday and we didn't understand the process because like, it's just like orientation, show up. So right. I got my name tag, I got my kid's name tag, and then I'm standing there and I'm like, oh, someone come get us. Like, what do we do? So we stand there looking lost together for about 5 minutes, holding hands. Cause again, you know, holding hands. And then I'm like, let's just go over here. Let's walk in the building. So I walk in the building and I see a lady standing there who's clearly supposed to be directing people. I'm like, hi, we have no idea what we're doing. Yeah. Can you help me? And she's like, what are you here for? I'm like, orientation. Mm-hmm. She's like, to meet the teacher? Or I'm like, I don't know. Whatever fourth grade orientation is happening right now, that's what I'm here for. And she looked at me, she's like, I don't know. Please hold. So then she went and got someone else and pointed me in another direction. And then this lovely lady explained the whole thing to me and what I was supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
which is very free flowing, which is part of my confusion. And she's
Mhm.
like, you need to go downstairs. And the lady's like, I will take you there so you don't
Oh.
get lost, you know. And I said to, you know, and I kind of looked
Mhm.
at Kenzie and was like, you just have to ask. You see, I didn't know what I was doing either. I was lost. I also don't know the system.
Right.
And what did I do? I asked for help, and then she didn't know, but she got me help. And then we got walked to the class and we met the teacher and we did the orienting that we were supposed to do. And in 20 minutes, we were gone. Right.
Yeah.
But having that conversation of, I feel lost too, and letting her watch me navigate it. Or
Yeah.
I feel nervous. I don't really want to meet someone new, but I have to. Here I go.
Mhm.
Right? How do I introduce myself to people?
Yeah.
And just modeling that for her to see. I don't know if she'll do it, but it gives her some kind of frame of reference of maybe how to handle those situations.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's also something we call a transition object.
Mm-hmm.
And this can take a lot of shapes and be a lot of different things and can vary drastically from age to age. Right? For little one, essentially, a transition object is something that a child, really any of us, take with us, right, to bridge the gap, bridge a gap. It can be, so in this case, it would be something that a child would take with them into school to help them feel connected. Maybe it's connected to themselves, maybe connected to you as their parent, maybe connected to, I don't know, maybe for older kids, right, a larger sense of belonging, right, whether it's a community or a culture. But something that feels like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not this island floating around. I do have a tether back to something that feels nice to me.
Mm-hmm.
For little ones, you know, when we send kids to kindergarten, they get to take a blankie, right? Or sometimes they get to take their stuffy, right?
I used to draw when my kids were younger, we called it the love button, and it was just a heart I drew with whatever pen was in my glove box.
Yeah.
On their hand, and I had one, and I would be in carpool line drawing the love button real quick, and I'm like, if you miss me, just push it and I'll push mine. They obviously got older and like, that doesn't work, and that's when it stopped working, is when they were like, garbage is this. But like, we all just went with like whatever pet color ink I had in the car, like little splotch of a heart. And that was, they were like little, I mean, they must have been like 2 and 4, 3 and 5, like little.
Yeah.
We have nerding out, but we have it's gotten a little bit more sophisticated. Now we all have this really adorable Kendra Scott heart bracelet that I bought for their birthdays, and we all have different variations of the exact same bracelet. But that's our connecting object, right? I've done it with clients where we just get thread and make friendship bracelets, and those friendship bracelets go to everyone in the family or whoever, your parents, whoever you want to feel connected with, and then everyone has the friendship bracelets on that they can like touch if they miss, right? It's just something to make you feel connected to those people when you're far away.
It could be a lunch in the note or note in the lunchbox.
Oh, I used to do those messages in the lunchbox with like inspirational quotes for the day.
This year, I was told no more of that, mommy. I would do a letter or an adjective for like each letter of the alphabet, like, you know, we're day to day one for every day. Like, be amazing, be bold, be cunning. I don't know, that's not a good C word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And today this year she's like, don't write on the napkins anymore this year, mom. Okay, got it. Right.
I mean, the quotes was great, but let me tell you, start that.
Yeah.
Finding a unique quote for every day of the school year, shove in a lunchbox.
That was a lot. No, that's a lot.
And I tried to make it relevant to what I knew my kids were going through.
Oh my God.
I know, it was work. Then I started recycling them because I figured they'd forget.
I forgot. Yes, your quote library.
I did that for 1 year, and I was like, that's a lot. It was a lot of note writing. And then if I forgot, they would be like, where was my note?
But like sometimes asked to wear like a piece of clothing of mine or a piece of jewelry of mine, right? And I know like not everything, but most of my very favorite things. I'm like, no, not that thing, but you could do this one, you know, instead. And letting her kind of have that piece of me.
Yeah.
This year, Ellie, this interesting to me because she's older, but one of the transitions that she's had to make or she's gotten to make is, well, twofold. One, they are able to walk now around. Her school is in a shopping center, which sounds weird, but it's this really cute um, little borough where the school's at the back and there's restaurants and shops and services like a hair salon, blah, 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 like around up front. And they can walk now to a handful of restaurants and order lunch. And they were taught the first week how to do it. And, these are the ones you can go to in order to go. These are the ones you can sit down at. And if you sit down, this is how you have to tip this way and blah, 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 blah. Right. So I think it's good. That was a little nerve wracking for me. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're going to be leaving the school building? Yes. Okay. And going to a public place? Yes. Okay. And there are going to be teachers around, right, Mommy? Yes. There are teachers all around. They go with us. They're milling around. It's only these restaurants. The restaurants know to expect us. They also have a deputy who's there, sheriff's deputy who's with them. I'm like, okay. But with this new upgrade, right, is they also get access to their cell phones more frequently throughout the day. Like on them during class, but it's more acceptable she can have it at lunch. She almost I think they might even have to have them at lunch when they go off campus. And she can check it and send me messages between classes. And I like that so much because a lot of the times the messages that I get feel like that transition object. Like, I miss you. I can't wait to be back with you. I can't wait to see you. Right. Which is sweet. Yeah. It's getting so big and also gives me that opportunity to say, I'm here. Right. I'm still here. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
4 hours. Today was 2 more hours, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Our school has they collect phones at the beginning of the day. Yeah. And they will not be returned until later. They decided that middle school, it was too distracting, even having it in your locker, because you open your locker and you check your phone. But I also see, I can see where there's a benefit for that too, right? It forces that disconnection during the day in a way that maybe lets them focus more, but then we'll have to get creative with transition objects if needed, right? And again, I mean, some of these things I started and they didn't last the whole year, right? It's to get through that initial transition. Yeah. When that clinginess, that sounds like I'm being negative about it, but the need to be closer is ramped up. Right. I mean, even the love button we didn't do for a full school year. It was just until they settled in. Yep. There were certain days they may have wanted it more than others, where I'd be in the car and they'd be like, Mommy, the love button, and I'm like, I don't know why today, but okay, we haven't done it in 3 weeks. Here we go. And I would just do it real quick. Right. So there's definitely, I think you have to kind of go with the ebbs and flows, because the other thing I think that happens is if there's a stressor at school, you may increase again. More of it. Yeah. Last year, Ellie wasn't able to have her cell phone as much. And, we came up with a plan for her to write to me in her journal when she would have wanted to be able to talk to me. And I believe we let a teacher in on that plan. So and last year she kind of had, this year she has many classes, many teachers. Last year it was more of like, she had 2 that did all the classes. So we let the teachers know that was kind of the deal, was if she was feeling emotional or stressed and needed a connection with Mommy, she would be able to write to me. And they were supportive of that. Yeah. Now, I want to ask about one other thing before we bring this to a close, because we talked about this, it happens on a spectrum, right? I know 2 kids are the same, and parents need to be ideally watchful and able to respond. Now, this can go too far in some children, right? Where we see a difficulty with individuating, right? Or where this isn't temporal, it isn't situational, or it can get worse and doesn't seem to abate on its own. These things like the regressive behavior or the other demonstrations of anxiety or separation anxiety even, or oh gosh, fear, right, in children. Can you talk as a child therapist a little bit about how do we know, where would we know, all right, maybe instead of saying yes to sleeping on the floor of the room, this would be a time or a child or situation where we might say, you know what, I think you need to be back in your bed. It's time now. You can do this.
Or, for example, like I mean, I don't know, this might be difficult, right? Because obviously we can't learn when we're so flooded with anxiety or any emotion, right? So the child you mentioned homeschooling, but right. So if for a child who's school avoidant, right? How do we know when to say, yeah, baby, you were staying home with me. We're not doing this, right? If it's so terrible, we can homeschool versus to say, no, you got this. You can do this. We're going to learn some skills and I'm going to kind of gently nudge you out of the nest here, right?
Yeah.
Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, those are the kids that I often will get calls about, right? Because the parents are like, they need to go to school and it's an issue, right? Or not only is school an issue, but like it's an issue when they play baseball. I have to sit through all the practices. And if they don't see me, they freak out, right? This just like a kid that really struggles with separating.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, if that's the case and it's impacting them in, I guess you look at impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to have a kid that's nervous about school and needs a little bit of nurturing, but can go face that fear, that anxiety, versus a kid that's like, I'm nervous about school and I will not face said anxiety. I'm done. I can't do it, right? And they just completely decompensate or can't walk into the school or can't stay. Like I said, I have clients that like can't stay a full day. They make it an hour or two and then that's it, right? So obviously, if that's more your child, kind of that more challenging end of the anxiety where it just floods them so much that they can't do the things they need to do,
Mm-hmm.
or it impacts more than one area of their life,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not just school, but it's their friends. They won't go to friends' houses. They don't want to play. They don't want to do sports, or you have to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, obviously, if it's not age appropriate, like a 2-year-old may want you around, a 6-year-old should be able to go play soccer with their friends and meet up with you later. So it's looking at what's developmentally normal,
Mm-hmm.
meaning your child's age, getting some support around it, because the way, without going into like an entire treatment plan for that, it's a very calculated approach to
Mm-hmm.
not teaching the child how to manage that overwhelm,
Mm-hmm.
but then allowing the parents gently put them in situations to test their new abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, I'm going to drop you off at, soccer camp and I'll see you in 3 days and you're going to be independent. Yeah. Because there's a reason, right? There's something going on with that child, why that's so hard for them. So it's figuring out like, what's that about?
And to do that, throwing you in the deep end, the dropping off at soccer camp I'll see you in a week could potentially be traumatizing for that child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in general, I take a gentle, supportive approach because I don't want a kid to ever feel like they can't conquer a fear or that they're defeated. So it's setting up wins.
Mm-hmm.
For some kids, it's been honestly changing schools.
Yeah.
Something about that, right? That fresh start. I've worked with kids that did have a hard time separating, and the poor parents are sitting at every sports practice and they can't even run to their car to get something, or the kid freaks out. Mm-hmm. So we did do a lot of work around coping skills for that child. Mm-hmm. Right. We did transition objects, those friendship bracelets. I had a client make it for everyone in their family. Everyone had one. And when one broke, they'd come to my office and say, I need to make another. Mm-hmm. And everyone got one. And what we did is we slowly, right, I think this is where like professional help's important. Mm-hmm. We slowly built in challenges, and the parents and I worked together to create mini challenges that were more likely to lead towards success.
Yeah.
Right. So I will be at, I will disappear for 2 minutes from your soccer practice, but then I will be back. Right. And you can wear a watch and look if you need. Right. And you kind of increase this so that they learn they're not going to die without you. It'll be okay. But we have to feel safe to do that. And we have to feel comfortable. It's the same way I would approach like a phobia.
Right.
Right. If you have fear of elevators, eventually the treatment is like, we imagine the elevator, then we eventually stand in front of the elevator, then eventually we get in, and we keep titrating the challenge a little bit more so we can, have successes before we actually get in the elevator and ride it up and down. Right. So that's what I would do, but I don't know if that's like I can fix this myself. I suppose as a parent, you could try to implement that strategy.
But I think it's important,
that's what I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to know, okay, that's when we would seek professional help, right? As if, like you said, it's kind of across different situations. It doesn't seem to be abating. and it causes distress or impairment, right? Prevents them from being able to do the things they need to be able to do,
Mhm.
and seems to be perhaps like beyond what would be age appropriate,
Yes.
age appropriate.
Yeah. And, depending on your school, if you can get the school on board to help,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's helpful too. Maybe there is a school counselor who can do some check-ins to kind of bridge their breaking away from you, right? Maybe there is, maybe the teacher has the bandwidth, and this is, I struggle with this because some of the teachers like, I cannot, but maybe the teacher has a little bit of bandwidth to help your child a little bit more. So some schools, depending on how taxed they are, can be helpful and of assistance too. In helping your child kind of ease into the school day.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of the work I would do is setting up those transitions, setting up objects to help them transition, and many challenges. But yeah, I mean, those kids exist for whatever reason. They just struggle, and those are the kids I do get calls about, ones that, it's impacting their ability to go to school and be there. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about it all, haven't we? We've talked about kind of age, stage differences, how anxiety manifests, or worry or trepidation or excitement, right?
Yeah.
In the kiddos, a little bit about how it manifests in us, a little bit about how that was influenced for us based on our past experiences, right? For better or for worse. There's some temperamental things too we didn't touch on too much, right? Around resiliency and independence that probably influence some of this. We talked about transition objects. We talked about a little bit of extra nurturing and some minor regression or minor irritability, right? To be expected. And we've talked about some red flags, some things to look out for, right? If there's some prolonged or kind of across the board, or things that are not age appropriate that we really want to pay attention, that are causing significant distress for our kiddos.
Yeah.
Yay. Hopefully this has been helpful to somebody listening.
I know. Yeah. I mean, and again, it is a normal part of the experience, again, within, reasonable parameters. And if it's not, it's okay too. Listen, those kids exist. I've worked with them. They finish treatment. They're in school. They're
We just
becoming more independent. It's sometimes just need a little bit of guidance, and that's okay too.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it. And to remember, as parents, right? We went through this too. Our kiddos are little tiny humans trying to navigate these things all on their own in some ways for the first time, with lots of different pressures. Yeah. And the things that we might expect from starting a new job, right? You mentioned that earlier, right? Like, wow, what would I need to do? I might need to really talk to my spouse and my best friend and my mom, and I might cry a little bit. I might be irritable a little bit. I might have a little bit of a shorter fuse for a little bit. I might really need to power up and be sure I get good sleep and lots of water, and maybe I want to wear my favorite outfit that makes me feel really special and pretty, or my power shoes, or listen to my power song on the way there, right? And then vent at the end of the day and maybe cry some more, or maybe be a little bit more irritable for a little while longer. But that transitions are hard for all of us, and that we do need these objects and rituals and touch points and touch people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yay.
Yay.
We have lots of answers today.
Oh, we do? Okay, yay. Maybe this is the first time we've ever had answers.
I think sometimes we do. Some topics are just a little more,
We just talk about them.
Yeah.
It's hard to solve.
Thought-provoking, less solving the world's issues, but we had some good solutions for today.
Yes, we did. Now, do people know where to find us?
I don't think we've mentioned it in a while.
I was thinking about that at 3 a.m. Okay, yeah. So our podcast is From Our Perspective, two therapists, moms, and a mic, and we're everywhere. You can find podcasts. We're also on YouTube. And then Claudia is mightyoakparenting.com and claudiaglassman.com.
Yes.
I think it's so cool that you have your own domain. Mine was taken. But I have to share one with my husband, which is fine with me. RobinKatieTruax.com, TRUAX. And we're on Instagram too. So there's that. All the things.
Our Perspective podcast.
Yes.
Yes.
And our email is from our perspective at proton.
Mail.com.
Yeah.
Look at
Okay.
that. We're
Yay!
around.
Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Bye.